Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily for December 15th, 2024. Coming up, we are at the NBA Cup, so we're going to talk about it. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, S. Good morning, Zena.
Morning.
Good night, because it is 10 p.m. and we're sitting on the court. We just finished up Rockets Thunder. Our finals is set, and we're going to get to the games in a minute. But, guys, I want to talk about the vibe here. I wasn't here last year. Our producer and co-host, Andrew Schlecht, was here, and, he told me a lot about how it felt in the arena, and it was weird, no fans for the teams. But how did you guys feel about this year? I know that some people were saying it was quiet on TV, but in here, it also was quiet.
Yeah, the reaction on social media definitely mirrored what we saw in person, too, because it was quiet. Some people talked about how it was like, you mentioned, a high school match, right? It felt like an AAU game sometimes. It did give off Summer League vibes, which is fitting because we're in Vegas, and that's the home of the Summer League. I think it got better towards the end of that Rockets-Thunder game, and maybe we've kind of overcorrected here on the bad vibes, the quietness. It was actually pretty good. I thought the vibes were what you would expect for a game, by the way, that, they had to organize in 48 hours.
Correct.
No one had any.
And none of these games have a close fan base either. It's not like in L.A. where it's an hour away. But then there's, the fact that the first game started at 1:30.
Yes.
And if you know Vegas, most things don't get started until 12 a.m.
Most of the people in here weren't planning to be awake.
Yes.
Correct. Exactly. So I think that there was something to be said about the first game being so early. And then I agree. By the time that you got to the 5:30 game, vibes were up a little bit. Things were a little bit louder. And I don't know much about acoustics. Maybe people listening to us do. But this is a hockey arena. It's not meant for basketball.
Yeah.
And from what I know about the crossover arenas, like the LA Kings and, that play in, it's a different vibe. And if it's made, even just the way they go up, the chairs go up in this arena, I feel like there's something to be said about it just being a little bit quieter.
Well, what's funny is you saying that has me right here spinning my head around, which I'm sure is great to watch on video, but there are actually acoustic treatments that are oddly shaped. So there's something going on. I don't know, but it also was quiet. The fans, they're not fans necessarily of these teams. Although I did see a lot of Hawks gear and Bucks gear. And
the chants were going, though. We can't. I don't want to discount
we did get an OKC
We
chant.
got OKC chants. We got some Hawks chants. There definitely was vibes, but if anything, you saw and heard fans going with the vibes of the game.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not here necessarily to cheer for a particular team, but I appreciate what's going on. So there was a lot of oohs and ahs and cheers and things of that nature.
This would have been a fun first game for someone, right? And especially when you consider that the ticket prices were cheap, which
is great.
Right, it's a good thing.
You can get all three games, the two today, and then the championship for under $100, $99.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's more than amazing.
By the way, look, we
the
don't work
NBA
for
product
the NBA,
for $99.
To point it out in a positive light. Look, the NBA is so expensive. You take a family of 4, which I couldn't imagine taking them to an NBA game. How rich are you?
$800.
Yeah. And so, think about it. What a cool opportunity. There were a lot of kids here.
Yep.
I thought it was great. The vibes were good. And the games were awesome. So I want to jump into that now, guys. Rockets Thunder. This game was excellent. The first half was very much about the defense. I mean, the Thunder only scored 41 points in that first half. The Rockets look like a team that are built to just throw dudes at Shai, which is kind of funny when you consider OKC has built a team that's got dudes that can throw. They can throw them at everybody, but it's built for Luka. It's built for Anthony Edwards. And so it's just fun to see this dichotomy, these two young teams. And look, we've been on this Rockets kick lately. We really like
Rockets
this team.
and Hawks.
I know. But this Rockets team, they have like a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
And I thought that was present in the game. And they're not as good as OKC. But they can hang with them because of that chip.
I think the way that they can hang with them, and Ime Udoka has coached them. You guys had that podcast great with Sam Amick was basically talking about the dog mentality that these Rockets have established for themselves. I think that is what separates them from every other team in the NBA when it comes to the mentality that they bring, right? Like Şengün, he's starting the game off, setting the tone. They had that little scrap.
He's chest bumping Ime Udoka in the warm-ups. And he hit him hard. I mean, it's the
game,
these guys are going.
Look, the game was over, and they got into a scrap. And that was Case and Wallace, too, getting into it. But, ultimately, not being not backing down from that type of thing.
Right.
That is what makes Houston so feisty
Yeah.
and frisky.
Oh
As
my
you know,
God.
Well,
I love the
they're
word
more than frisky.
on
Yes,
this
they're more than
pod.
frisky.
Too good to be frisky. But let's talk about the Thunder. I mean, look, you mentioned Case
Can I jump in here?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because I've seen all I need to see when it comes to the Thunder.
Okay.
They're winning it all.
The title.
They're winning.
Not the cup.
They're winning the cup, and they're winning the title. And hell, they
treble.
might win the season record too.
Okay.
Really? Oh, well, wait.
That's
probably
the-
not gonna
that's
win
the
73.
treble.
That would be amazing.
No.
Just
Like
highest-
most wins.
Most wins.
Most
Yeah.
wins.
Okay,
Excuse
gotcha,
me.
gotcha,
Yes.
gotcha.
The
And it's
NBA
funny
treble.
because the thing I saw tonight that particularly sold me on this idea had nothing to do with basketball, and S just mentioned it. It was that Case and Wallace, Alperen Şengün scuffle
Nice.
towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter. Number one, shout out to NBA security because they broke record time.
It was so
getting
quick.
out to the court. That was impressive to see in real time. But after the scuffle, OKC, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets his 4 under his arms. They go as a pod, and they wait for the announcement of whatever it is. Double tech is what it turned out to be. And you see them point like, okay, we're going this way. Move on to the next play.
Right.
As a unit. In that moment, as I saw the 5 of them all together, huddled up, laughing, enjoying each other, I immediately looked to see what the Rockets were doing. Fred VanVleet and I'm not sure who else, someone else, they were still arguing with the refs. 2 of them were still arguing with the refs. Alperen Şengün was down the court. There was complete discord between the 5 of them versus OKC. In my opinion, when it comes to figuring out as a team, how can you beat a team 4 straight or 4 out of 7 times to win a playoff series and win the NBA Finals? It's about who can overcome those moments together.
Yeah.
Do you disagree with that?
No, I actually love that. You know, this team, we've talked all year about how young they are, and that's one of the things that we hold up as a detraction, right? Like, it's not that they're not good enough. It's not that the roster isn't flexible enough. It's not that they haven't done the things. It's just they're young. They have to prove it.
They haven't been there yet.
But it's a crazy amount of maturity on the court for that team. And this is it's a great moment. I'm glad you pointed it out because even Kason Wallace standing up to Şengün is quite a bit of like, that shows maturity, right? And in the postgame, he said, "We're not going to get punked."
Yeah.
And Hartenstein said he's got his fine. Yeah. He's covering his fine. Like, it's just like that level of camaraderie is so hard to break when you're talking about going into intense games, going into games in which teams have scouted for you and they're looking to frustrate you. If you are that locked in during the NBA Cup, the finals, the playoffs,
I think
are
a part of that is how well coached they are by Mark Daigneault.
Yeah.
He keeps them even keeled. You go and ask him a post-game question about expectations or, do you think this team is a championship contender? He's not going to jump out and give you a yes, they are. We're still trying to build. We believe in this process. We're trying to work every single day to get better. Like, that is the type of mentality he's trying to instill in his team that, like, we can't grab what we don't have yet, right? And I think that's the best part about OKC. You mentioned the youth. They're not actually that young, in my opinion. Like, yes, they are one of the younger teams, but they have experience in a Caruso, in a Hartenstein, and we saw that tonight where those guys made huge plays in the fourth quarter.
Also, Shai's not like 22.
Right.
I think the youth is less
like
about
the
the number, but it's about the experience. How many times have you been put in a Western Conference Finals? How many times have you been tested in that route? And I think that that's why people label them as young, but you're absolutely right. They're not young in age. They have a lot of experience going up against significantly successful teams in the West. And now I think that it's a matter of putting all the pieces together. Now you've got your star scorer, and not only Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, we got to give Jalen Williams some love too.
Absolutely.
And then they also have just a ton of scoring power around them, but it's their defense that's the root.
Yeah.
And that's the scariest part.
Yeah.
That's
the
the scariest.
I agree that there's no one in the West that I think I would take over OKC. Boston
is always the
Boston.
Boston's the big problem that everyone's trying to solve.
Yeah.
Guys, stick around after the break. We're going to talk about the Bucks and their win, and we're going to maybe hit the Rockets a little bit more. Okay, the losers in the game. The Rockets.
Damn.
Okay, they did lose.
They lost.
They did lose the game.
They lost.
Not that opening. That's crazy.
Well, they lost. They did a great job in the first half.
Yes.
They held the Thunder to 41 points. Shai was 3 of 12. I mean, they really did. They were disruptive defensively. Men Thompson
incredible.
Had a fantastic half of basketball.
Yeah.
The issue is, as always, the offense just leaves them, especially in crunch time. This is another game where it's who's the guy.
Yeah.
The veterans can't step up. Şengün is not able to get it done yet. Jalen Green's not the guy. I mean, are we just going to be a broken record all year?
No, it is right. And I think that's why people bring them up in these Jimmy Butler conversations, the star conversations, because that's what they're missing. It's the closer that can finish off these games for them. Their defense does such a great job for 36 minutes. We need someone to close out games for that last 12.
Right.
Jalen Green hasn't been able to do it so far. Him and Fred VanVleet combined to shoot 8 of 30 tonight. And I think, part of it is they rely on Fred so much when it comes to the pull-up shooting that, if he's not hitting his shots, it's sparse.
Well, we said this the other day. Too many of their possessions wind up with Fred VanVleet with the ball with 3 seconds left, taking a very tightly contested usually no dribble pull-up. We see him airball these.
This is what's going to hurt them in the playoffs ultimately. Yeah. They're a really special defensive team, Amen Thompson you mentioned, but it's the offense.
And I believe they're in the bottom third of the league in pull-ups, and it's if that's your offensive game to end a shot clock, to end a quarter, to end a game, you're not statistically set up to do that well.
Right.
But what's interesting about the Rockets is that the best thing about them is what's actually hurting them in the end when it comes to this offense. You look at their bench. You got Cam Whitmore just sitting there. You got Reed Shepherd just sitting there. But guess what? They cannot play because they can't play defense.
Because they can't defend.
Ime Udoka, which I respect, will not compromise his defense just because you can score the ball.
True.
But imagine if you had a Cam Whitmore in the game or Reed, anyone that could go up strong in the middle, Reed Shepherd that could put the ball up. I mean,
the shooting too.
They could use the shooting.
They could use the shooting, but it's so interesting how that compromise – not the compromise, but that dichotomy between great offense is sitting on the bench. But we got great defense on the floor.
That also, they have the depth to do a consolidation trade eventually. I don't know if that's necessarily Jimmy. Maybe it is. Maybe they end up going for it. I'm not necessarily sold on that. But
their asset collection is built to go out and get
someone.
Whether it's a guy who is Jimmy Butler, who's not quite going to be the guy. He's 35 years old. I think that they definitely have enough for that. It's just whether they can
when they do it too.
Let's swing to the early game because the Bucks. They stopped our Hawks, guys. The Hawks, they did everything they could. They had a really nice comeback in the start of the third quarter. They started running on the Bucks. It's funny. I was walking through the tunnel, and I overheard the Hawks coaching staff talking about, we got to run. Why aren't we running?
Especially against the Bucks.
You can run on the Bucks, and they did. But the story of this game, Zena, Giannis. He has put this team on his back, and he is going to try to carry them. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They found their footing, like we've talked about, and he was crazy in this game.
And emphasis on the word crazy, because I would love to find out what else has gotten into Giannis' psyche in the way that he is attacking the basket. It's on a different level. And he's always been someone to attack the basket, especially, we've seen those gallivanting hops. He gets to the basket in 2 steps. But this year, it's not only the quickness with which he's getting to the basket, it's how he's ripping the basket down when he gets
angry.
Up there. He's angry when he gets up there. All of his might, all of his power is up there. He's been unreal.
It's like young Shaq.
Yeah, he's just right. It's
or like Orlando Magic Shaq.
The basket did something to him. He just goes out there, and then also in the same breath, sometimes he goes so hard that he kind of misses some of his teammates that are already spotted out. But either way, 32. 14 rebounds, 9 assists. You can't ask for a better game out of your star.
He had that incredible block in the
fourth
quarter.
Oh, my God.
The timing on it where he's going up, he catches the alley-oop. Both him and Brook Lopez get a contest. Like, those are the type of plays that, yes, they show up on the box score. They end up on the highlight reel. But it's like, he's not only a great offensive weapon, he is a two-way star.
Yeah.
Which is what makes Giannis so special, right?
And tonight's game was so interesting was the dynamic between the young team and the old team.
Right.
Like, there was this foil between the two of them. And in the first half, the old team looked old.
They did, yeah.
They looked like they couldn't quite remember what they were supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
They were off on, like, they were not on the same page several times. There were definitely, like, miscues on passes.
Yeah.
They looked like, all right, maybe time to sit Grandpa down a little bit in some plays. But in that second half, it was definitely a complete switch of, youngin', I've been here before.
Right.
Okay.
Fourth quarter for them.
They were crazy.
I thought Doc did a really good job of getting them settled and getting them to actually defend. You know, they were just switching.
I'm glad you're crediting Doc Rivers.
I am. I try to give coaches credit when they make good decisions.
Yeah.
And he got them, well, you know, their switches were a little wild in that third quarter, and this is why the Hawks got that run. But once he got them to stay in front of the ball, they just did a better. I mean, imagine that. Stay in front of your man, and it makes it more difficult for them to score. And I know it sounds funny to say that, but these guys had to be reminded of that, and the Hawks can do that to you, especially when Trey can get it going. Now, look, the shot wasn't falling for Trey. But no one else was sticking.
Still
shots
ended up with 30.
And he still
right?
And the Bucks were doing such a good job of denying everyone around Trey.
Yeah.
Trey had to keep putting up pull-ups, which isn't statistically his best shot.
I will say though,
the free throw was his best shot.
Yeah, 17, 18 free throws. Well,
and
like
Giannis
him and Giannis.
Had 18, like,
well, that's the whole game. Like the free throw contest they were having was basically the fourth quarter of that game.
How many fouls were in the fourth quarter?
19 fouls in the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, which is just
the game became a slog at that point. But man, the Bucks, they just look so much better. And I think that's a big takeaway. And Bucks Thunder Tuesday night.
That's going to be awesome.
I mean, I think, you know, when you looked at these four, those are the two favorites to make it to the final. And we're going to do a big preview, you know, for the Cup final. But just like initial thoughts, like knowing the matchup now, like what is the head-to-head battle that you're looking to see the most?
Well, one, I'm very curious as to who's going to guard Shai in that matchup.
The answer is no one.
Yeah. But then it's like, but here's the thing. Who's going to guard Shai? And then also, who's going to guard Jalen Williams?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And that's the problem with OKC. There's just too much attention being asked for other defensive
I'll throw one back at you, okay? Who's going to guard Giannis? Because, yes, OKC's defense is incredible when it comes to guarding and defending guards. Yes, they have a Hartenstein. Yes, Jalen Williams will take on that assignment. But, like,
here's my answer
that's
to you. OKC will guard Giannis.
Aha.
Yeah, team effort.
See, this is what you're going to run into. And also, think about this. If you're OKC, the guys that you have to take away are Dame and Giannis. So, Brook Lopez, step right up. We want you to take 15 threes.
Yeah.
You know, Chris Middleton, we're going to
did that
test
against
those
Dallas,
ankles,
right?
We're going to test those ankles.
Yeah.
AJ Green, are you for real? You know? And I think that's what OKC has done such a great job of doing all year. That's what I expect to see. But to me, I think, honestly, that the Shai versus Giannis matchup is really – I think Giannis is going to have to guard Shai. And he is not – this is not the ideal defense for the Bucks.
Yeah.
But I just think that when push comes to shove, he has to be their best individual defender, and it might be their only chance. If it's a close game, we are going to see
especially with that starting lineup, I'm just like –
yeah, it's not going to be Dame. It's not going to be –
I can see Gary Trent Jr. coming in and handling that assignment.
Best of luck.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to score 40 points a game or 40 points against the Bucks if they guard him with Dame and Gary Trent. I just think he is going to feast.
That's true.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. Stick around after the break. We're going to talk about, unfortunately, some bad news for the Sixers.
Yeah.
More bad news.
Well, it's a day that ends in Y, and that means we've got some sad injury news for the Philadelphia 76ers. News came out that an MRI revealed that Jared McCain, the lone bright spot, really, of their season, has a torn meniscus in his left knee. He's likely going to need surgery, going to be out indefinitely. And this is the season from hell for the 76ers. And how does it get worse?
I don't know. I honestly don't know how it could get worse. Can you guys figure out a way that it could get any worse than it is right now? Paul George misses a bunch of games. He's come back, hasn't really gelled or looked like the Paul George you'd want him to.
I don't want to say I don't want to put it in the atmosphere.
In terms of how bad it could be? Okay, fair.
Yeah,
don't do that. But also, I don't think, I mean, we could talk about the Embiid of it all. He had the rarest sinus fracture of his face. Only one.
Of the 53 facial fractures recorded for the NBA.
And he's had all 3 types.
Correct.
So it's just the rarity of Embiid hurting his face, dealing with the knee issues, McCain getting hurt while having a Rookie of the Year season, Paul George getting hurt multiple times on the same knee, Maxey having to shoulder the load and not being able to do it.
Also being hurt,
losing the hamstring injury. So can you find a good spot from the Philadelphia 76ers? Maybe the only bright spot is that they can tank.
They have their own draft.
Trust and process.
The silver lining for them.
It's not even fully. If it could be an OKC draft pick. Top six protected, as Mr. Schlecht
mentioned. Camera there. Well, yeah. Anyway, that's really sad. Jared
it is
McCain
not always sunny in Philadelphia.
No, it's not.
Not been sunny one day this season.
They had think of the expectations the Sixers had before the season. $60 million in cap space.
My gosh.
We're signing Paul George. It's going to be the year.
They're coming out of the East.
Yeah. They're coming out of the East. This is
like
finally the year.
It was like everything was shiny, popping. Everything
Caleb
was
Martin is
excited.
coming. We've signed everybody we possibly can.
All the
and
cameos.
to have this type of season, it was the worst possible scenario.
Unbelievable. Other news.
Yes, good news, I guess.
Better news.
Yeah.
Better news if you're a fan of the Warriors. Better news if you're a fan of the Brooklyn Nets.
True.
We have a trade. Dennis Schroeder is now a Golden State Warrior. The Warriors send 3 second-round picks and DeAnthony Melton's contract, which, of course, he's out for the season with that after knee surgery.
Yep.
For Dennis Schroeder, who is a
a second-round pick.
3 seconds, right?
3 seconds.
No, they get.
Oh, they
Dennis,
got a second.
Oh, they got a second.
I completely missed that. So they got Dennis Schroeder and a second.
There
Thank
you
you
go.
very much, Zena. Wow, I missed it with all the seconds in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Zena, here it is. How does this look for the Warriors? Dennis Schroeder, is he going to fit with Steph?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the biggest thing that the Warriors needed this season was someone that could create alongside Steph, particularly in those late game or late shot clock situations when Steph was doing what he does, which is has all the gravitational pull of the defense and can't get open or can't get the shot that he's looking for. Who else can challenge the defense from the top of the key, et cetera?
Yeah.
And that's what Dennis Schroeder has been able to showcase all season long. He's averaging 19 points right now. He's also
awesome.
rebounding well as a guard, which is huge, and the Warriors always love that. I think that any movement the Warriors fans are going to be happy about.
Yeah.
Right.
They needed this. It was just since last season, there's been so much stagnation. There's been so much like inwards looking of, can we find what we need on the bench? Can we find what we need within our own cohort?
Internal development.
What if
Internal
we
development.
played pods way more?
Right. Like what if, and it would just kept being this, let's try something else within our own world.
Right.
And so this is the first big move that the Warriors are making since last year of trying to change the way they look on the court. And I think that that's really exciting. Defensively, I don't mind Dennis Schroeder's defense.
I actually love it.
I think he's the best.
I think like that's the part that's underrated to me. He's going to be an awesome defender, and if you think of like what Melton brought on the defensive end, he matches so well.
His ability to navigate screens is something that the Warriors they have Gary Payton who's so good at it.
Yeah.
Well, when he was on the Lakers, like Schroeder, that was the reason they made it to the Western. Wait, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Does Schroeder start though?
Yes. I believe so.
So pods to the bench.
Pods to the bench.
Okay.
I think
Gotta
so.
do it.
I think so. And one thing I'll say, though, about Steve Kerr is that, it does depend on practice.
Sure.
It does depend on what actually happens, what he sees in terms of rotations. But I absolutely do believe that Dennis Schroeder gets a start.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be a one in, one out with DeAnthony Melton.
Yeah.
And it was, those Melton minutes were so key in the way that he was able to be two-way. And so I think Dennis Schroeder immediately plugs in.
I think it's a heck of a trade, again.
For
It's a
Brooklyn,
steal.
too, man.
It's
Brooklyn,
a steal.
Yeah.
Brooklyn finally is going to get closer
Yes.
to the tanking team that they want to be. They got their draft pick back. They've been, we keep saying it, they're too good to tank.
Yep.
And now
And they got an expiring contract.
That's it. Who's not going to play, right?
But he's not going to play. And like, think of what they got Schroeder for from the Raptors. Basically was a throwaway. Raptors wanted to walk away. Now they're getting 3 second-round picks in return, which is a great deal for Schroeder.
Absolutely, And again, now we're on Cam Johnson watch.
Yes.
Because Cam has got to be the
now,
next
I ain't going to lie. That's who I thought the Warriors would go get.
And I do believe the Warriors were trying to get him, and it just probably weren't willing to give up the
I would
picks.
bet they didn't want to do it because they're waiting to see what happens with the Jimmy Butler situation.
That would be my guess, too. We're all waiting to see what happens with Jimmy Butler. And by the way, it is December 15th. So expect more rumors to start coming. That's going to do it for tonight's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. For S and Zena and Andrew sitting over there doing all the switching, I'm Dave, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.